Working on a SegaCD Model 2 top loader. I do have a CD in it, and I've got proper power to each. I've got RF coming out of the Genesis, and I also have stereo audio coming out of the CD. This is just the RF audio. Sounds complete and normal. If I mute that and turn up the stereo, I'm not getting it all. Like, not even close. You can hear the difference big time. So that's one thing. The other thing is it simply is not loading the CD game. But it does have power. It was trying to access the game. The CD is spinning, and I did see the laser move. Actually, it's trying to focus right now. There's the light. So apparently the door switch is not working either. It's kind of making it sound like it might be actually hitting the CD, which is not good either. I don't see any circular scratches on it. It does seem like it's kind of low, like the spindle might have been pushed down a little bit, but it is up off from the laser. I don't touch these enough to visually say, oh yeah, that's fine. Press the start button. Okay, maybe it did load. Checking disk. It's trying to play it as an audio CD, so it's definitely not reading it very well, and that might simply just be the laser itself is dirty. One of the best ways to check that is to put a flashlight on it sideways and see if you see dust specks, and I do, but I also see that the plastic surrounding around the lens is very messed up. Could be affecting it. Might end up popping this apart anyway just to get that off of there. If it's affecting the focus of the lens, it'll never focus and it'll never load. I'll get a cotton swab with alcohol on it. That lens will rub down. Take off the excess with the dry side. Give it a good blow to dry off the excess rubbing alcohol. Looks like it's not wanting to cooperate as much now. It's not even trying to load as an audio CD. It is making sounds like it was seeking around. I still hear something. But it definitely looks like it's given up. audio problem could just be that the connector between them is dirty, or the connector on the SegaCD is dirty. I think I've cleaned the one on the Genesis. Well, that's enough for me to say that it needs to come apart. Well, I've taken it apart enough just to get that little piece of plastic around the lens off, so I'm sure that the lens can come up and down to focus. And it hasn't actually tried to play it as an audio CD again. It says start button. And then it'll just reboot. Just like that. And I still don't have audio, which I haven't cleaned the connector or anything, but it has come apart and reinserted again, so that may not be it there either. And I also know that this thing has been apart before because I'm missing some of the screws that hold it together. So pop the magnet off, the door, 3 clips, and you can run this thing without all the plastic around it. Well, I went and searched and found a working unit of mine to steal parts from. Well, anyway, I got it out to pull the laser and see if I can get it to at least load the game on that one. Well, that ain't gonna work. This one has a ribbon cable connecting the laser and the motherboard. And this one must be an older version, I'm not sure, but it just has wires and looms right here. So maybe if I look for a spindle that looks like that instead of one that's black. So I found a bunch of these, I just didn't bring them in. Or maybe serial number. This one's like a 301-89397. Oh, this one's even starts with a different letter, T301-93591. Huh. Worth a shot, but that one ain't gonna work. Let's try something else. Okay, so I've found one, and it was also a T or whatever, and I've got its laser assembly in here, and I just unplugged the original one and set it off to the side. So I'm gonna start it up and see what happens. Well, there you go. Started right up. So the laser on this one is most definitely bad. Also, I guess I figured out just by looking on the back side, it clearly has a headphone port and it says mixing. Which, you know, I don't do SegaCD stuff enough to know this, but apparently you have to run a jack from the headphone port or whatever to the mixing port of the SegaCD to get all of the sounds out of it. But that makes me wonder, and maybe people will tell me, that does the SegaCD output sounds from itself that do not come through on the Genesis? That's another thing that I just don't know about them. So apparently there's no problem with the sound. I'm just dumb. And also I mentioned something about the lid not needing to be closed for it to run. Well, somebody had also messed with the actual switch, which is back here. I thought it would have been up here, but it's just been a while since I had one apart. The lid lever hits a switch back here behind it, and somebody had this apart and just messed it up, and they're permanently connected together, which not a huge deal, whatever. So now it's time to get with the customer and see if he wants to replace that laser or not. Well, I finally got a new laser, and it looks like, if I can get this cord out, lift the whole thing out of here and get these two connectors off. Okay. Not very well marked. Looks like the multicolored one was in the white one. And on the new laser, it's red and white. And the new laser is a KSS-210A, but the old laser doesn't really have any markings, anything resembling that. It's got like SOHOT4. They look similar enough, but I'm going to give it a try. And then there's two screws holding the number one. Holding the slider rod in place. And pull that out. Kind of acts like maybe it should come in from the top, but a bit of a jigsaw puzzle. That's how it goes. The old one falls out and the new one won't go in for nothing. I'm wondering if I can just pop this gear off without too much fuss. There it went. That means this would just fall in place like that. Get our slider. And with that, real easy. Okay, so that slides nicely. You'll find that gear wherever it flew off to. Okay, and hopefully the gear will just click right back onto its post there. Oh, that was much easier. So I definitely say the trick is to pop that gear off. It looks like it sits up high enough to where if you get some needle nose or whatever underneath of it and pry, even if you do mess up the bottom of the gears, they don't really contact anything. So that should be good to go. And we'll get our connectors put back on here. Looks like I may need to desolder that blob. Is this the anti-static blob? Let's try it. Okay, there it is separated. It's pretty obvious because there's this cap over here, which would mean a power to ground bypass cap, so you don't want them shorted. So now let's give it a test. Reset it. Put the toward back in and connect all these back up. Multicolored, black and red, and then the small one. Now, I do believe I am ready to test. This ground lead over here, it didn't seem to matter whether it was connected up or not. Okay, I'm going to leave it on RF output from the Jenny, and we've got an original Sega 1602 powering the Jenny, but I have a cheap Chinese 9-volt switching power supply for the SegaCD, but I have actually taken it apart and changed the polarity so that it'll actually work on the SegaCD. So it's center negative. Let's see. The CD on there, magnetic hold down. Turn that down. Game's running. Okay, now the new laser's in. I'm going to try to dial it in a little bit better by adjusting these 3 pots, the orange top ones. And I'm mostly just going to do it by ear and by when it messes up. Basically, I'm going to turn it clockwise or counterclockwise until it messes up both ways, and then find somewhere in between. Sometimes you got to reset it after playing with them. Right now I'm not really far off from factory settings. And then the far top one, 104, or 401 I should say. It looks like VR404 doesn't even exist. And the middle one is 02 and the bottom one is 03. The problem with games is you really want the laser all the way out to the outside edge of the CD as well, and that's where music CDs come in, because I've got a CD here where I'm pretty sure there is data all the way up toward the outside edge, and sometimes I use that for doing this. But it seems to be running as is, so I'm going to go ahead and do the music one. Try to get it to go to the last song, and then mess with those pots. Yeah, I don't really think it needed much adjustment from stock. There seems to be a lot of play in them before anything bad happens. So I think we'll leave it like that, and I'll probably put the game back in, put it back together, and let it cycle for a long time just to make sure it's all good to go, and then move on. When putting the bottom 6 screws in, I've mentioned this many times on many other consoles, but this is especially true for these since these screws have pretty coarse threads on them. Whenever you insert them down in there, actually try to rotate them counterclockwise like you're unscrewing them, and listen for that click, just like that. And what that'll do, it'll let you know that you're perfectly lined up for the threads that are already in the plastic posts inside of the console, and you won't be making new threads through them, and you'll be less likely to strip them, and it'll be a lot easier to put together. You can just hear it. You can just there it is. Just a simple tip. Okay, I just wanted to show you the trick for removing the magnetic CD holder so that you can test it without the lid being on. If you look down in here, there's just 3 of these clips, on different positions, and you just pull those back with a screwdriver or something, and that whole thing will come out, and then you can just set it on there. It's really that simple. You also want to find a way to get the lid close switch somehow shorted together all the time. On this particular model was easy, just to pull off the little plastic lever and make it to where the 2 contacts were shorted together, and then put the plastic lever back on there. Like Turbo Duo, that one's a little harder, as it's just kind of a push button thing. So you either have to hold it or tape it down, but the easiest way is to get underneath the PCB and short the 2 contacts together with like a resistor, capacitor, component leg, and then just remove it whenever you put it back together. I would definitely say, after messing with the new laser for 3 or 4 minutes and not being able to get it back in there, popping that gear off seemed to be the easiest way to get the new one back on there. Also kind of wanted to show how to get this piece off easily. If you grab it on the spindle end and squeeze it and move around, there's a clip right here, and then on the outside there's a clip. If you can get to those and squeeze those and move them, you might actually have to use a screwdriver on this end, but once those are unclipped, I think there's one clip right here, over here, but then it like folds out. Okay, there's no clips on this back end. Those have to go in there at an angle, and then it folds back down before you get all the clips back in there. Okay, that's how that goes together. And one thing to be aware of is to make sure the spindle is higher than the plastic. I've seen a lot of duos where people will put the disc in and they feel like they need to push it down onto the spindle. These spindles, they just lay on top of there. You got the magnetic holder on top of it. I believe like CDX maybe has the one where you actually have to push it down, and it has little ball bearings, like little 3 ball bearings that actually clip the CD in place. Since it's portable, it gets moved upside down and all that kind of stuff, so there's no holder on the lid of that one. But if it gets pushed down far enough, the laser will come up and actually hit the CD and scratch it. So you just want to take a look at that and make sure. And that's nothing. That's like a fingernail difference between the plastic and the actual spindle, but that's all it takes. And lastly, I have yet to come up with a way to truly polish these and clean these. This one has just come out of the wash, and it looks kind of dull right here, but that's the way they're kind of supposed to look. But if you look close, you can definitely see scratches and whatnot. And the only thing I've come up with so far to make that look better is WD-40. If anybody has any tips and tricks on making these look nicer and getting these scratches to disappear better, please let me know, because WD-40 is really bad for stuff like this if you ever plan on painting it. You know, it could ruin a new paint job if you had some kind of silicone on there already. But anyway, I think that's about all for the SegaCD Model 2 laser replacement video.